Do you remember '02 being a time in particular where you guys were sort of struggling?
I think that, the answer is yes. I think it was a time where we had a lot of talent, but I don't know that the talent were in the right places. And there was a sense of trying new, getting to the point of how do you present this new talent? And, they're not all going to be hits by anybody's barometers. And it was a time of experimentation. It was a time of let's see if the audience wants this, and if they do, then let's give it to them. But how much? What is that appetite? How much are they going to eat? So it was a challenging time because you had so much new, and you were trying new things. You didn't have Austin, you didn't have Rock, and it was challenging.
It's so challenging that even CNN is doing a story covering the WWE's business decline. Which, by the way, over the week, I know we're talking about current stuff, but Darren Ravel showed a little chart and graph about WWE stock the last 6 months relative to a bunch of other content creators. WWE stock looks like this, and everybody else looks like this. It's pretty crazy to think this content that WWE has and how their business model has really changed. Um, is that just the evolution of the business, Bruce? I mean, when you first got in, it was mostly about ticket sales. It was becoming about pay-per-view. Licensing took on a new thing. International started to grow. Way back when Vince was talking about a network, which we thought back then probably meant like a cable TV channel. But this thing has just continued to evolve, and the ways you make money in wrestling now are probably a stark contrast from the way that you were making, 2 or even 87, right?
The business continues to evolve, and it always has. When you go back and you look at the origins, it was a cottage industry. It was a territorial industry where everybody had their own fiefdom, if you will. And as the business grows, the merchandising money was how many pictures could a promoter sell at a live event.
Right.
That was your merchandising. T-shirts were not a thing until the 80s, pretty much. There was a guy, Jim Melby and Norman Keitzer in Minnesota, who had deals with certain talent, mainly AWA talent. They had a Mr. X, Dick Byers, Mad Dog Vachon, but a couple of those guys that they would sell shirts in their magazines. And that was a big deal because you just couldn't find wrestling shirts
Yeah.
of talent in the 70s. They didn't exist. And then the 80s, I remember the first one that we did. Well, the first one we did was the Two Babies Wrestling, and that was just locally. But of a talent perspective, was of Jim Cornette, a caricature of Jim Cornette with the tennis racket, and it had the Ghostbusters,
Yes.
sign over it. That was the first big hot seller. And then from there, we went on to Rock and Roll Express. And then I got into the t-shirt business and started doing everything on everybody. But it was just a different time. So you made money from merchandising. You made TV wasn't really a moneymaker for anybody. TV was just something that you bartered with your local broadcaster to put your show on the air to promote your live events. That's where you made your money. So you would try and get a TV station to come in, pick up the production costs, shoot the show, whether you did it in a studio or at an arena, whatever, but let the TV station pay for those costs of producing the television show. And that show was then used as a 1 hour or 2 hour commercial, whatever it was, to promote your live events. So you weren't making money off TV. That wasn't a thing. And you had most promoters had one tape, either 1 inch or 2 inch tape. And they would bicycle that tape around the territory. So that same tape was their master. And then the next week, when it came time to record a new show, they recorded on that same tape because they didn't save it. They thought there was no value in saving it.
Right.
And that's why when you look back, the rare finds of people having old shows, when VCRs came in, thank God there were people that recorded them on VCRs and kept them, because the
Right.
promoters weren't. The guys producing the show weren't.
Right.
And, Fritz and Paul actually individually, independent of one another, but they were some of the first promoters to try to syndicate their television show internationally. And what they would do is well, what we did in Houston was we produced a separate tape called Best of Texas Wrestling. There was a compilation tape of our shows. And it was some of the stuff that we didn't show locally. It was the main events, that we were doing for the live events that you didn't show locally on your TV show. We would put those on there for international to get our name out there and to promote bigger stars. But it wasn't like, at least for Houston, it wasn't like, oh, hey, we're going to go over and run in Israel. Fritz did and did very well. But for us, it was, no, man, they're paying us. They're paying us, and they're actually going to make videotapes of these shows and sell them. We're going to get like $1 per tape or something like that. I don't know what the deal was, but that was the thinking, and that's how they made, another way that they made money. And then it grew, and Vince changed the way that the business was done, in that instead of paying to be on a local station, that local station then began to pay us.
Amazing.
And so you're making money off of that.
It's amazing to think about the evolution of the business, and it's just going to continue to evolve. And maybe that's why we all pay such close attention to the business end of it.